Keep watching the politics.
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.
But here we are. I'm going to do it alone today. Dustin is indisposed. What can I say? You stay on the planet a number of decades in the United States, and things don't fucking change one bit. Today we're going to talk about Kazakhstan. We're going to talk about U.S. meddling in Kazakhstan. So for you old viewers, you old hats, it's the same old thing over and over and over again. The U.S. accuses Russia of meddling in its elections, and here's the U.S. meddling in Georgia and Ukraine and Kazakhstan, everywhere else in the world you could possibly imagine. 800 bases estimated worldwide. I'm going to use a template I'm going to use a piece. A very informative piece from Covert Action magazine. Covert Action magazine and I go way back. In the day, it used to be called Covert Action Information Bulletin, and the senior editor was Lou Wolf. And Lou lived around the corner from our bookstore on Connecticut Avenue in Washington, D.C., and was an occasional visitor. And we just hashed out the world's problems there over the counter with no customers. So I go way back with Lou. Actually, my wife and I and a couple of other people we know ended up filming Philip Agee when he returned to the United States many years ago. I think, what was it? Probably back in the 80s. And because C-SPAN backed out at the last minute. Oh, I can't imagine why. Okay, Kazakhstan. The headline on this Covert Action quarterly or Action magazine, it's by Jeremy Kuzmarov, who's now the managing editor, reads, National Endowment for Democracy provided $1.2 million to Kazakhstan to help spark color revolution against pro-Russian and pro-China regime. Well, there's the expanse of the entire thing. Here you have the National Endowment for Democracy, the NED, which is part of the USAID, which is an arm of the Central Intelligence Agency that works through the U.S. State Department to destabilize countries around the world. Now, why would the United States be interested in destabilizing Kazakhstan? Well, I mean, here we have Russia and Kazakhstan. Those two countries, they share a 7,000-mile border, the longest border sharing in the entire world, the longest one. Now, and the United States, what kind of border does it share with Kazakhstan? I mean, what is the nothing? Not even a millimeter? Oh my God! I mean, who's the imperialist? Jesus fucking Christ! Even the basic knowledge about geopolitical affairs would tell you, for Christ's sake, If you share a 7,000-mile border with the country, you have some stake in what's happening in that country. But the United States, which shares not even an inch, not even a fraction of an inch, not even a nanometer, is meddling, is over there, is fucking around in all these Eastern Bloc countries. Right here, I got the latest report on poverty among EU countries, among European countries in general. Guess who's at the bottom? Ukraine. Well, Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova and Kosovo. Well, Ukraine, it's accepted in 2014 after a coup by the United States, accepted neoliberal policies coming from the West, from Europe and the United States. Now they are the poorest country in Europe. Georgia, the same thing, under that mafia leader, Saakashvili. Now they're the second poorest state. So if you want to become poor and a sucker at the same time, join the neoliberal European Union and the United States, and they'll suck you dry, you dumbasses. I was telling the Ukrainians that 30 years ago. Did they listen? No. Now look at that's just a Nazi-run country that's going to fight a proxy war for the United States against Russia. That's what they're preparing to do. And I'd like to finish this hour-long piece with a little bit of proof about that. So what's happening here now is that in Kazakhstan, where they used to have price controls on liquid gas, which is used by many people to run their automobiles. Well, they went to a neoliberal policy. I haven't been able to find much on who was the person that instigated this neoliberal policy, but I do know one thing that I garnered from this interesting article here. It explains why a niche fuel market reform triggered major Kazakhstan protests. So what it explains is, you have to excuse me here. What it explains is that the protests were sparked by a fuel market reform first broached in 2015. Well, the current president, Tokayev, wasn't in power in 2015. The old autocrat, Nazarbayev, was in power. So I would suspect that the move away from price controls in 2015 that didn't go into effect until 2022 were part of some scheme with the West to exploit the Kazakhstani people. That is, when it became the price of liquid gas became subject to market fluctuations, they would be the people would get the brunt of it, and the people who were involved in creating the law would be long out of the picture, but still collecting the revenues. And I think the other thing you have to consider very seriously is market manipulation. So that's what started the riot, and that is a legitimate consequence of neoliberal forces. That is relying on market forces that are manipulated in Central Europe, in London, and in New York, for Christ's sake. So who would fucking do that? I wish I could find more information on it. This is a short article. It goes on to say, they came into effect the start of the month that sought to remove state price caps for butated propane. often referred to as road fuels for the poor due to their low cost, while making sure the local market was well supplied. Here's an interesting paragraph here. If you think that Kazakhstan was like wholly a satellite of Russia, then you're mistaken, because it says previous subsidies had created a situation when Kazakhstan, a major oil producer, regularly faced shortages of butane and protein. Producers including ventures of U.S. companies Chevron and Exxon, which preferred to export to get a better price. So here you have another neoliberal set of policies where Chevron and Exxon have control over petroleum in the country, and instead of offering it to the people of Kazakhstan, this is why some leaders are nationalize these industries. They export it, so the people there don't have access to it or access to it at reasonable prices. So, and the other thing that's covered in the title of this article, quite adequately, is the National Endowment for Democracy. I mean that these color revolutions, which incidentally George Soros also, as well as U.S. Intelligence, has contributed a huge amount of money to Kazakhstan's NGOs, these so-called organizations that are for democracy, when they're really anything but. They're for themselves. What's really involved is an attempt to halt Russian development in the region, Russian access to the huge amount of mineral wealth available in Kazakhstan, but probably just as importantly, and maybe even more importantly, to set another roadblock in the way of China's Belt and Road Initiative, because Kazakhstan is central to it. It's also, if you have a map, you'll see that Kazakhstan and China share a long border. And what's on the other side of the Chinese border? Xinjiang. It's where the Uyghurs are. So we've heard about the Uyghurs, this so-called genocide, of which there's no proof. What it is a crackdown on CIA-sponsored terror, using the Uyghurs as their arm of terrorism, more meddling by the United States. And so you have the full picture. Would you think you're going to get the full picture if you rely on the U.S. media? Fuck no. As this article begins, Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has been widely condemned for carrying out large-scale rights abuses with Russian backing. Secretary of State Antony Blinken referred to Russia as an occupying power. Now, I want to stop here because this is probably one of the cleverest things Blinken and Samantha Power have done. The focus is on Ukraine right now, and the bullshit notion from the Western media that Russia intends to invade Ukraine. And I also have an article that counters that very profoundly, but that Russia intends to invade Ukraine. So what they've done with this Kazakhstan situation, by taking advantage of this liberalization of fuel prices, has done is it gave them a pretext for saying, look, here come the Russians. Now, the Russians have a security agreement with Kazakhstan, which it covers Belarus and several other countries in the region. And so they're there legally. They're there at the behest of the Kazakhstan government. They're there, but now it because they sent 2,000 troops in, which quelled the revolution, made the revolution a failed revolution, because and this is also by design by the U.S. by introducing violent elements into the Kazakhstani revolution. Now, the violent elements that I can safely refer to have been limited to Islamic fundamentalists. Islamic fundamentalists who operate within Kazakhstan, and Islamic fundamentalists who have been rumored to have been flown in from Turkey to kill policemen, behead policemen, burn buildings, burn cars, all kinds of mayhem. Well, that's been put down by U.S. troops. But what does that do to the NGOs who thought that they were getting into a kind of a peaceful color revolution change that would while they were being backed by U.S. CIA money? Well, they got suckered. They got suckered once again, because it makes them look like they're part of this violent U.S. attempt, essentially at regime change in Kazakhstan. So that's what this alludes to when Anthony Blinken talks about occupying Russia being an occupying power, and then he made the outrageous statement. This was really stupid. But maybe Americans are so stupid and apolitical. I mean, if I read the comment sections of the major newspapers, and I'm appalled at how ignorant Americans are and the ignorant remarks they make about U.S. foreign policy. I mean, get it right, or you're going to be in dire straits, because they're coming to do it to you. In fact, they're already doing it to you. So they're already applying the kind of screws they're applying to the rest of the world. They're already applying it to Omaha, Nebraska, to Youngstown, Ohio, to Houston, Texas, to wherever, whatever city or burg you happen to live in. They're coming for you, because they've made you as stupid as they possibly can. But here we have a situation where Blinken wants to talk about an occupying force, and he goes, well, once Russia's gotten in, they're hard to extract. Well, the United States has been in Korea since after World War II. The United States has been occupying Japan since after World War II. The United States has been occupying places for 20 and 30 years. It took them 18, 19, 20 years to get the fuck out of Afghanistan, where it was a hot war. It took them almost 20 years to get the fuck out of Vietnam. So if you want somebody that overstays their welcome, if you want some asshole that wants to sleep on your couch, just go to Uncle Slimy. He's where he puts his feet up on your couch. He eats your fucking food. And he's a deadbeat. He's a fucking deadbeat who puts boots on the ground in your country. Look at the United States and Africa and AFRICOM. They're virtually in every militarily. Not like the Chinese. They're not building infrastructure. They're building military oppressive forces in virtually every country in Africa that will allow them. That's why they're going after Eritrea. But I don't want to get too far afield here. Let's go back to this article that I'm using as a template here in Covert Action Magazine. Russia has indeed sent troops into Kazakhstan in support of Tokayev. On January 5th, Tokayev invoked Article 4 of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, that's the CSTO, a Russian-led alliance of former Soviet states that includes Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, and Kyrgyzstan, which agreed to provide Kazakhstan with military assistance and defense. So it's not just Russian troops there. It's the other members of this national security group that have formed this alliance that have gone in to aid the Kazakhstani government. It goes on. In most media coverage, including even in alternative media, Tokayev is depicted as a bad guy with Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, Tokayev's statement about criminals and murderers leading the protest is actually true. It is true. And those murderers and criminals are funded by the United States. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation reported that 2 police officers in Almaty were found beheaded and that government buildings were stormed and set ablaze. RT News reported that protesters were driving away military vehicles, disarming soldiers, burning cars, and had set on fire the mayor's office in Almaty, the country's largest city. Lest one think RT News is biased since it is pro-Russian, the New York Times also featured a photograph of a burning police car on January 7th, and they've had other images and expressions of violence. But what's interesting about the New York Times, and this is what's so interesting about U.S. foreign policy, they don't give a fucking rat's ass about Kazakhstan and Kazakhstanis. As a matter of fact, the New York Times, they misspelled Kazakhstan several times in their reporting. It wasn't even close. They were off by 4 letters. 4 letters. They didn't even get it close. And that, not only that, they also got Tokarev's name wrong, spelt wrong. I mean, it just and they misspelled the former autocrat Nazarbayev. They misspelled his name. So they don't really even care enough to have an editor look at it and get it right. They know that American public isn't going to read it, or they're just going to read the headline and take it at face value, whatever the New York Times says it, and riff off the headline in their comments like that's the truth. They're not going to investigate anything, so they feel perfectly safe in lying to the U.S. public. It's like I used to say about George Bushy before the second Iraq War. He's lying to a grateful nation. The U.S. population is grateful to have lies. So, of course, Pepe Escobar is somebody you can trust, wrote in Strategic Culture about the protesters in provoking, quote, total anarchy, robbery, looting, hundreds of vehicles destroyed, attacks with assault rifles, ATMs, and even duty-free at Almaty Airport being completely plundered. This assessment dovetailed with that of Galib Agaliev, a human rights activist in Almaty who participated in the protest. He described the crowd as, quote, an unruly mob of thugs clearly organized by crime and group marauders. And if we know anybody that loves working with organized crime, it's the CIA. Just ask Lucky Luciano and his former buddies at the OSS, if you can find any of them alive, or just ask the people around Iran-Contra or the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The CIA and organized crime, or just read Doug Valentine's book or books. The CIA, they love organized crime. Same modus operandi, same MO. Regime change. Well, that's the MO here, baby. The media almost universally failed to report that political organizations in Kazakhstan received $3.8 million from the George Soros Open Society Foundation, which promotes regime change against Russian leaders in Eastern Europe and Central Asia under the guise of advancing democracy and human rights, and more than $1.2 million from the National Endowment for Democracy. The NED was founded in the 1980s by the Reagan administration to carry out functions previously adopted by the Central Intelligence Agency. It has been involved in supporting color revolutions or regime change operations throughout Eastern Europe and Central Asia, directed against pro-Russian leaders like Edward Shevardnadze of Georgia in the 2003 Rose Revolution, and Viktor Yanukovych, who was ousted in Ukraine in February 2014. In 2018-19, the NED spent almost $3 million in Belarus, which was targeted in a color revolution directed against socialist Alexander Lukashenko, a close ally who sustained considerable popular support because of the strength of his country's social programs. Social programs that for you Americans, that's healthcare for all. That's education, a good education provided free for all. For you Americans who don't understand what social programs means, that's what it means. It means improving your infrastructure. It means shit you don't have, you stupid assholes. I was so happy to see Ben Norton. Ben Norton did a wonderful piece. You don't have to listen to this if you don't want to, but you should. But when you're done with it, go over to Ben Norton and his propaganda today. He did a wonderful piece on Kazakhstan, and God love him. He lost it with you fuckers out there, you dumb Americans. He called you idiots, and you are. If you write into him or me and you want to complain that they're trying to establish democracy in Kazakhstan, eat shit. The same approach has been deployed in Kazakhstan. In 2020, the NED budgeted $61,450 for defending human rights, $69,920 for what it calls promoting and defending civil society, and $300,550 for independent news and commentary. And you could bet your bottom fucking dollar it was a lot more than that, and it was done through back channels that we have no inkling of who they are, what they're about. All these initiatives sounded positive, but their primary intention is to stir anti-regime opposition and propaganda. Amen. When violent protests begin to escalate, the opposition media kick into high gear, depicting the president as a tyrant committing human rights crimes, and international media, including the alternative media, follow suit. Regime change usually follows in the case of Kazakhstan, Russia and CSTO support, combined with the lack of organization and vision of the protest movement, make those prospects here unlikely, and they get more unlikely every day. So unlike the coup in Ukraine in 2014, it's not happening. Corrupt foreign-backed leader. The leader of the Kazakhstan protest movement, Mukhtar Ablyazov, is a former energy minister and wealthy banker who fled from Kazakhstan to Britain in 2009 after being charged with corruption and embezzling as much as $6 billion. $6 billion, embezzling $6 billion when he was head of Kazakhstan's largest bank. Now he's been called the Juan Guaido. This is how outrageous it is. Not only do the Russians want to extradite him for crimes, they want to extradite him from France. He's currently living in France. He has a huge house. He has a villa. He has, $6 billion. He's got 120 cars. $6 billion will buy you a lot of shit. So not only does Moscow want to extradite him to Russia, but this is how bad this dude is. London wants to extradite him to England to stay on trial for embezzlement, because he not only embezzled from Russian interests, but he embezzled from British interests. So this guy, this is the guy that the United States, this is Uncle Slimy's Guaido. This is the guy they want to have president. You can imagine what he'll do. He'll be just like Guaido. He'll loot everything. What Guaido has bankrupted Citgo, to the point where it might end up in receivership and up for auction, or just liquidated in some form or another. And this guy, well, he's already begun to do the same, and he fled $6 billion he's stolen, dubbed by the British press, this is the British press, as the world's richest fraudster. Now that's not Pravda. That's the British press. World's richest fraudster. This is Uncle Slimy's guy. This is the guy they want to put in power after the regime change. Him and the former minister who the current government, after these just after these riots began, was arrested for treason in Kazakhstan and is being held for treason. Ablazov lives sumptuously in a 9-bedroom mansion in London's Billionaire Row and a 100-acre estate in Windsor Great Park, while renting a 15,000 square foot mansion on Bishop's Avenue in London. He owned 3 private planes and more than 1,000 apartments and 106 cars. Oh, I'm sorry. I said 120 cars. Oh, I know that sort of negates everything I'm saying, I guess. 106 cars. That's a lot of fucking cars. That's a lot of real estate in London that he owes money on. I don't know why the British are so hot on getting him in the docket, but they'd like to see his ass in a London court. In 2012, a British judge ordered him in prison for lying in court about his financial assets, which prompted him to seek asylum in France. Lord Justice Maurice Kay observed that, quote, "It is difficult to imagine a party to commercial litigation who has acted with more cynicism, opportunism, and deviousness toward court orders than Mr. Ablazov." So Ablazov. So this British judge calls the guy like a total fraud, yet the United States wants to make him the premier, the president of Kazakhstan. What? I don't know. It sounds like maybe the U.S. foreign policy went from shooting itself in the foot to shooting itself in the head. Ablazov has set up headquarters for the new color revolution in Kiev, home of a U.S.-backed government infiltration by neo-fascists that is priming for war with Russia and has called for Western military intervention. Well, there you go. Anybody that'll go along with a proposed war with Russia involving the United States or U.S. proxies, that's the U.S. kind of guy. That's the kind of foreign policy you have. If that isn't shooting yourself in the head, I don't know what the fuck is. His lawyer, Stephen Rowe, was the attorney for Joseph Mifsud, the notorious Maltese British agent who tried to entrap Trump campaign worker George Papadopoulos in 2016 with help from Italian Democratic Party networks and Italian government under Matteo Renzi. Well, that's he neither here nor there. Okay, the geopolitical stakes. Here we go. Russia and China. Besides failing to discuss Ablazov's background, almost all media coverage of Kazakhstan has failed to probe the important political stakes underlying the protests. Russia is depicted as the bad guy because it is supposedly helping a ghastly regime. But as bad as Tokyo may be, the alternative appears to be worse. Yeah, well, I don't know about that statement. I don't know why you would make the statement that Tokayev as bad as he may be, because actually I haven't seen any evidence of that. As a matter of fact, the only thing that makes him bad as far as the West is concerned is that he not only wanted to ally with the West to a certain degree, but he also wanted to ally with Russia and China and other elements in Iran, for example. So basically, he wanted to become a Switzerland. And actually, Nazarbayev before him was seeking a kind of neutrality. They've got plenty. It's a wealthy country. I have another article. I can see I'm not going to be able to get to it, but it talks about the immense wealth of Kazakhstan, and that's what he wanted to share it. Probably not with his own people that much, but probably not as much as a neoliberal policy in the West exclusively would have done, which made Ukraine the poorest country in Europe. The poorest country in Europe since 2014. It only took them 8 years. Actually, it took them less than that. They were the poorest country several years ago. It took them like 4 or 5 years, and they completely bankrupted and ripped off Ukraine and left them in the control of a bunch of Nazi freakheads who are willing to go fight a proxy war against Russia for the United States because they're idiots. They're nuts. Another article I have here talks about how they blocked off water to Crimea. They blocked off traditional water supplies to Crimea, but I won't have a chance to get to that today. I can see I'm running out of time. Let me get going here. Russia has strong interest in Kazakhstan, including a launch site for space missions that it rents, a major missile testing site where a next-generation missile defense system is being developed, and a reliance on Kazakh gas as a backstop for insufficient Russian production. Kazakhstan is also one of the world's leading uranium producers, and it's not only uranium, it's bauxite, it's lead, it's copper, it's 100 rare earths and essential minerals, essential for everything. Lithium, oh my goodness, get Elon Musk on the phone or cut his throat, one or the other. I don't give a fuck. Kazakhstan is also one of the world's leading uranium producers and an important oil supplier to China, which has emerged as a strategic ally of Moscow. The color revolution, as of this writing appears to have failed. The reason is because Kazakhstan has benefited greatly from the Asian Economic Union, which has integrated its economy with Russia and Belarus. As a huge potential hub for accessing Central Asia, Kazakhstan, under Tokayev's leadership, is poised to receive considerable support under China's One Belt, One Road initiative, which will likely result in a huge buildup of Kazakhstan's railway and infrastructure and tremendous economic benefit. Oh my God, you can't have that. U.S. has got to step in and block that Chinese initiative to build railroads and infrastructure. Oh, geez. U.S. is just there to destroy everything and to steal everything it can get its growing little hands on. The U.S., it appears, would prefer to go back to the days of Nursultan Nazarbayev, who ruled Kazakhstan from 1990 and until 2019. His mafia-style tactics were apparent when the decapitated carcass of a dog was left outside the office of a newspaper that reported he had stashed more than $1 billion in state oil money in Swiss bank accounts, with the warning that there won't be a next time. Well, that's pretty mafia. That's pretty gangster. The money had come from the sale of 20% stake in the Tengiz oil fields to Chevron. So as a bribe. It was you think that U.S. companies don't bribe people? How naive are you? I mean, what are we born last Thursday? Has somebody changed your nappies yet this morning? I mean, Jesus Christ. And for $78 million in bribes given by an American oil industry consultant, James A. Giffen, the de facto U.S. ambassador, who also worked for Nazarbayev and helped secure Chevron's concession. So bribes. And that's the kind of guy that the U.S. now wants to put back into power. You can see why they want to do it. The guy that stole $6 billion. What's his face? Obliamov. I can't remember his name offhand. So in 2005, former U.S. President Bill Clinton famously enjoyed a decadent midnight feast with Nazarbayev while helping to secure a uranium mining concession in Kazakhstan for the Clinton Foundation, for Clinton Foundation donor James Juistrom. Now, just a little sidebar here. If you want to read some interesting dope on the Clintons, go to Covert Action. Go to Covert Action magazine, because they've got several articles on assassinations, new information on assassinations that the Clintons may or may not have been involved in. You can make your own judgment. Ron Brown, and what's his name? Foster, and Mr. Foster. I can't remember David Foster. I think David Foster among them. They've got a whole series on obscure assassinations. Some that don't involve the Clintons, and some that do. And they talk at length about the Clintons' involvement in the CIA drug smuggling in Mena, Arkansas, something that was heavily covered during the Iran Contra hearings by the Kerry Subcommittee on Narcotics and Terrorism. And they issued a six book report, and it has much information on Mena, Arkansas, and drug smuggling into Arkansas while Clinton was governor, and how much he knew about the drug smuggling into Mena, Arkansas. So that's a sidelight that I would definitely recommend for anybody if you want to know a little bit more about the Clintons and what they're capable of. All the unexplained murders that went along with the Mena, Arkansas CIA drug smuggling, Iran Contra debacle. I highly recommend the articles. Today, the Great Game continues, but the world is changing, and China and Russia are becoming more powerful, and that's true, and that's the way that this article ends. And actually, I do have a little time, and if I can turn it up quickly. I will cover a little bit of this, of the connection to Ukraine. Here we go again. I can't find the article I'm looking for. Anyway, there's an article also. Actually, I can call it up quickly. I know I can do that. It's right up here on the screen. Because this is really kind of fascinating. The reason I think this is fascinating because it's written by Russell Bentley, and Russell Bentley, he knows whereof he speaks, because Russell Bentley is now living in the Donbass. He married a Russian-speaking Ukraine, Russian woman, moved to the Ukraine with her, and fought with the Russian allied forces against the Ukrainians, basically the Nazi forces that the U.S. supports in Ukraine in open warfare, and this connects to Kazakhstan. I mean, we were focused on, or I should say, the U.S. was focused on the fact that Russia was planning for war against Ukraine, when in fact it was just the other way around. I mean, once again, you look at the geopolitics of it. Ukraine shares not only territory to a certain extent, but a border, obviously a border with Russia. They share a border. And the Russian troops were on the Russian side of the border. And there were probably a few Russian troops in the Donbass, which is eastern Ukraine. And then you had Ukraine with their forces. And you have, of course, all kinds of U.S. advisors and tremendous billions and billions of dollars in weaponry, and hoping to sell more of the military industrial complex. Let's not quote Eisenhower again on infinitum on the other side. But if for actual borders, Russia has so many hundreds of miles of border with Ukraine. The United States has no borders with Ukraine. None, zero. They don't have borders with Russia either. I don't know what their beef is. They must be imperialists if they come all that distance. Isn't that the very definition of imperialism? I mean, just look up your Giordano Bruno. Someday I'll quote it for you. U.S. and Ukraine are already secretly preparing for all-out war with Russia, and they intend to make it happen. And this is by Bentley, a Texan who enlisted as a freedom fighter in eastern Ukraine. Author Russell Bentley claims that the Biden administration, war hawks, and neo-Nazi Ukrainian officials are plotting a false flag chemical warfare attack to blame on Putin as a pretext for global war. And Kazakhstan, in that sense, was a diversion because the U.S. press presented that Putin is sending 2,000 Russian troops in, no matter how legal it was and how much it honored the security arrangement with Kazakhstan. It gave the image of Russian troops invading. So the picture of Russian troops invading Ukraine in the simple-minded, infantile mind of the American public could not be far behind. So here, the U.S. and Ukraine are secretly preparing for an all-out war while advancing propaganda to make it appear that Russia is the aggressor. Diplomatic talks in Geneva by the U.S. and Russia have failed to alleviate tensions because the U.S. refused to adhere to Russia's demand that Ukraine never, ever, well, this is in quotes, I don't know if that's actually a quote, became a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman stated that the U.S. would not allow anyone to slam close NATO's open door policy. Well, as much as Ukrainian Nazis and this U.S. State Department now wants to claim that the U.S. under James Baker during the Reagan era promised not to have NATO go 1 inch further toward Russia, and now they've absorbed like a dozen or so of these states into NATO that they promised they wouldn't. Even the fucking New York, even the fucking Los Angeles Times. This was one of their headlines. I don't know if you can see it or not. No, you got some other image up here. I think the show ended. Anyway, I hope it didn't end. I don't know whether I'm going to keep going. Here, this is it. It reads, you can't, op-ed. This is in the Los Angeles Times. Russia's got a point. The U.S. broke a NATO promise. It was promised not by just the United States. It was promised by a dozen other fucking countries in Europe that NATO would not expand. So I don't want to hear this shit from these fucking like neoliberal lying cocksuckers. And since the February 2014 Maidan coup, where worshippers of Nazi collaborators Stephen Bandera overthrew Ukraine's democratically elected pro-Russian leader Viktor Yanukovych, the U.S. has provided $2.5 billion in military aid to the Ukrainians, including $450 million in 2021 alone. They've completely armed Ukrainian Nazis to the hilt. So that's who the U.S. loves. They just love their Nazis. The aid has included 100 Javelin rocket launchers and at least 500 rockets, along with training in their use. So training in their use, that just means there's U.S. troops on the ground. And you got to have, if you got the guy doing the training, then you have to have the guy who's servicing the Jeep he goes to work in. And you got to have this, you got to have these outsourced guys who eat, ribeye steaks every night while your Marine son eats an MRE. Fuck this bullshit. Jesus Christ. The U.S. is really derelict. Other NATO countries, including Canada, UK, Poland, Turkey, have provided weapons training and intelligence. And those weapons are often, they're just American weapons laundered through countries like Poland and Canada and Turkey. And both the javelins and drones have been used in combat against the Donbass Republic Defense Forces. And then let me just finish with one paragraph here. I can find it because the article is quite long. Let's see. Well, this article goes through the Russian Russian demands for new demands at NATO to prevent further conflict, of which the United States has rejected all of them. And the United States has rejected non-military options. But okay. And anyway, okay. And then also further down the article, Bentley's article, he goes, the Russian-China strategic partnership is not only military, it is economic. The U.S. economy today is a facade, a paper tiger with no real strength or foundation. It's just a fiat currency. The U.S. national debt is officially $30 trillion, more than 90% of GDP. And the true number, including U.S. government unfunded liabilities, including $21 trillion for Social Security and $33 trillion for Medicare, is perhaps as much as 10 times higher. It is a debt that can never be paid. And that's probably what's forcing it into conflict, into these conflicting positions. So, to summarize, the current unrest in Kazakhstan was clearly fomented by the West. If not directly, they were looking for the advantage, and they knew. I mean, you better believe they knew that this neoliberal policy toward fuel for the poor in Kazakhstan was coming up. That's what they have these flaks for, that spend their whole days down at the Pentagon and over in Langley, taking a close look at, and then they rush to their supervisor and look, this is about to happen. So anyway, I hope you've learned something from this. There's a lot of good information online about Kazakhstan and other elements in U.S. and other U.S. meddling around the world. Keep going, keep learning, keep reading. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.